Usually with my reviews, once I write my script of opinions and upload the finished video, that's that. I won't revisit these movies ever, and my opinions would rarely change. Though if I had any, I would bring it up in a ranking video or something. But for the first time ever, my hamster wheel has been turning because of one of my reviews. For a little over a year, I had slowly collected my thoughts together and realized how fundamentally broken the movie actually was. How I might have cut it a little too much slack. That is why I'm here to say something that will probably make my sister surprised and maybe angry. The Incredibles 2 is hot shit.
What?
Now, most of my opinions from my original review still stands, but the negatives slowly started to overlap with the positives. When I first finished The Incredibles 2, I thought it was really good, but it felt like there was something off about the film that I couldn't explain, something that felt disappointing. Naturally, I shrugged it off because, hey, more Incredibles. But now, 6 years later, after a couple of rewatches and my own personal analysis of the film, I quickly realized how much this film pisses me off. It has to be one of the most disappointing movies ever made. 14 years that we've been asking for a follow-up to the first film, and this is what we got. Before I start rambling, I think it would be more appropriate if I actually listed what I liked about this movie, because Incredibles 2 is not the worst movie ever. It's just extremely bad. I did have a couple of laughs here and there, like Violet eating the ice cream and choking to death on the tap water. The score is underrated, though not as great as the first film. Edna Mode is god tier as always, and I love her being paired up with Jack. The Elastigirl fights are the most interesting part of the main story, and the Screenslaver is a cool and creepy villain. Not Evelyn though, just the Screenslaver character. I like how the subject with superheroes and perception is alluding to the real-life allegations with the police force. And I appreciate how they explain what happened to the Incredimobile, which was something I surprisingly didn't question. Yep, that's it. That's what makes The Incredibles 2 better than Good Dinosaur and Cars 2. Anywho, back to hating this movie. I'll start off with the characters. Bob is extremely unlikable in this movie. He yells and snaps at his kids as if they're a chore, which completely goes against his character from the first movie and is actually really uncomfortable. You'd also think that he would understand that if his wife succeeds, then he'll be able to do superhero stuff again, and that he should support her in any way possible. But instead, he envies her and actively resents her success. There's not even any apology scene. It's just thrown in to give him something to do, and then it's just ignored. There's also the problem with his super strength being messed around with too much. In the first film, Mr. Incredible lives up to his name, having the ability to lift trains and punch the very large Omnidroid. But in here, it takes him about 6 hits to bust open the Underminer's money vault, and he doesn't even try to move these pipes on the yacht. But in the same film, he can bend this anchor chain and redirect the Underminer's drill. It jumps back and forth just for plot convenience so the fights would drag out longer. Helen completely contradicts her previous counterpart, saying things that the original Helen wouldn't say, particularly at the dinner scene. For instance, she pretty much says that they shouldn't have interfered with the chaos, and subsequently agreeing with these detectives, even though it would have meant sacrificing the lives of dozens of citizens. She also says that it's not Violet and Dash's time yet to make decisions, despite the fact that the two saved Bob and Helen's asses on multiple occasions on the island, and with the Omnidroid, and were able to defend themselves in the jungle. This movie literally gaslights you, pretending that Helen didn't show eagerness to whoop some ass. Dash, out of all the old characters, has to be the most useless and most irritating of them all. His entire character is, I can't do my math. That's it. And I'm sorry, I know there was nothing they could do with his voice actor since he's too old now, but Huck Milner's voice is too far from Spencer Fox that it's distracting. He shouts and yells and is just too hyperactive. Violet is the closest to being passable, but her side story with Tony is just so lame. You could have had him knowing about her powers go in any direction, which no doubt would have been more substantial. But with him having his memory wiped in what was clearly a shoehorned Jack Attacks nostalgia bait scene, we get to see Violet just go backwards and become depressed, and her renouncement to superheroes doesn't even last long. It all just gets dropped entirely. For Jack, he's funny, especially when he's paired with Edna, but I feel that he's stupidly overpowered. He has over 17 powers, and this apparently is normal? What will Jack be like when he grows up? I would have really preferred if they had gone with that one internet theory where when a super baby is starting to show personality, they juggle through different powers that would have best fit them, like how Dash's impulsive nature gave him super speed, or how Violet has invisibility and force fields because she's shy. This would have expanded the universe in a compelling way that would have explained how superpowers work, but no. While I'm on the subject with superpowers, I'll bring up the fact that there's also no creative uses of the Pars family's powers, and especially with these new supers. They pretty much do what they've always done in the first movie, besides having their superpowers weakened because of plot convenience. When Violet was battling Void in the yacht, I had honestly expected they would team up and free the supers from the hypnosis. That would have been extremely cool and would have been a great payoff for Void as a character, but they really missed the ball and it's really disappointing. There's also so many times where I forgot what Brick's powers were supposed to be, which turns out to be super strength like Bob's, so that makes her useless. For the new non-super characters, Winston is nearly forgettable and his act of heroism is so forced that it's comical. Even though I had correctly guessed that Evelyn would be a twist villain right as she walked through that door, she is not a terrible twist villain by any means. Her role as the main villain is cleverly hinted through dialogue exchanges, and the thing that motivated her to turn out this way is shared at the beginning, and I like Evelyn's philosophy of how people can't just rely on supers to save them. But the nefarious plans to destroy Super's reputation is so stupid and confusing. I get that she's trying to make them look bad and unreliable, but just don't help them prove that they're good and reliable, especially by having recorded footage to share with the world. If she had done nothing, supers would have stayed illegal forever, or at least for a long time. And don't get me started on her backstory, good god. I get her point that if her dad didn't rely on supers so much, he wouldn't have died. But this was all because he was stupid. Any normal superhero fan would have stayed in the safe room and waited out the robbery. And any normal person would have kept the phone in their safe room, and not their living room. God! What did he expect to happen? And if he did get somebody on the line, the supers wouldn't have been able to get to his house on time since the burglars came into the room right as the call was being made. So it's not the supers' fault, it's her dad's fault for being stupid. This has to be one of the most laziest villain backstories ever. Pixar, couldn't we have just, I don't know, had the screenslaver be someone we don't know? Okay, I think I finished talking about the characters now. Oh wait, no I haven't. Remember Underminer? You know, the one thing we were all looking forward to when the trailers came out? Yeah, he just disappears 5 or so minutes into the movie. Honestly, I think it's now justifiable to say that everything regarding the Underminer has been false advertising. The battle that has been left open for a little over a decade is underwhelming and not really good. The way things were played out in the first film made it seem like the Parr family would fight together to save the day, and that the Underminer was wanting to take over the city, given how he declares war on peace and happiness. But no. The Parr family splits up, and the Underminer is just a typical bank robber, completely contradicting the first film's ending. Was the peace and happiness Underminer was talking about people's finances? What would the Underminer need the money for if he's always been beneath the ground? Why would he need to make a big announcement when he could have just activated the bombs and then move on? And as I've stated before, Bob is painted out so weak, but most all of those moments are in this battle, which makes this entire scene all the more worse. He constantly gets his ass kicked in the stupidest ways possible, which is something that wouldn't have happened with the first movie's Bob. Sounds like Pixar realized that if Bob was strong, and if the Parr family worked together, that the Underminer would end up getting caught. Great. And despite that they saved the city from Syndrome and the Omnidroid, people apparently still hate supers and want to keep them in the dark. It's just so stupid. If you really wanted to have this illegal supers plot into the sequel, have them fight a new villain that ends up making them fuck up their mission and look bad. But clearly they only wanted the Underminer in here because of nostalgia bait.
Well, that went poorly.
Speaking of nostalgia bait, this movie sure has a lot of them, and I'm not meaning like 5 or 6 references or anything, I mean the entire fucking movie. The plot hinges on finding any means to throw in nostalgic locations or characters. Gotta find some way to throw in Edna Mode, gotta find some way to have Frozone's wife make an appearance, gotta have 2 monorail accidents, gotta have our main character live in a no superhero life before meeting a billionaire who helps you get back into superhero work, but then betrays you for personal reasons, which leads to a battle that causes the family to work together and make society appreciate supers again. Yeah, you heard me right. This story itself is just a rehash of the first movie.
Dever here.
This is Elastigirl. I'm in.
This is Mr. Incredible. I'm in.
I'm gonna press the button! Not yet! Press the button! Not yet!
Not only is this story nostalgia bait, but almost every sound effect. Take a listen.
What is it, ma'am?
Come on, leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so. Girls, come on. Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so.
All this is extremely distracting, especially during a time when Disney is relying on nostalgia as its crutches. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, especially with the visual designs. The background NPCs look really awful, unlike the usual expressive and unique character designs in all of Brad Bird's previous work. It's not even the new characters that look horrendous, it's even the old characters. Things like the wrinkles and stubbles are more emphasized in this one, and it just looks bad. One other visual design that is really bad is the 50s style clothes, furniture, and architecture. It all looks cool, but it looks so off when you compare the design to the first movie. As a kid, to even as an adult, I always mistake this movie taking place in the modern day. But right as I put in the second film, I'm hit with 50s era everything to the point where it's distracting. These two movies are so visually far from each other that it's difficult for it to feel like it takes place in the same franchise. Also, if the styling is telling us that The Incredibles takes place in the mid-20th century, that makes all of the expensive technology feel extremely unconvincing. Like the Elasticycle or the clothes Edna Mode made Jack, which all contained advanced technology. Is this like Fallout? Is everyone gonna die? I think I made most of my point on why I've changed my mind on this movie, and why it's actually bad. I could go on about stuff like the John Lasseter incident, or how Rick Dicker never told the Parr family that their son has superpowers as he found out through Kari, but I think you get the picture. I originally gave it a 7 out of 10 rating, but I clearly was just in denial. The 2018 Incredibles 2 movie gets a 3 out of 10. And to anybody wondering why I dedicated my time to a movie that rubbed me the wrong way, it's because I really care about the first movie. The Incredibles has reached levels of storytelling that others wish they could achieve, and is one of the most used examples that animation is not solely for kids. It's not even dated, really. It's been almost 20 years and still entertaining, emotional, hilarious, impactful, memorable, and so much more. And Incredibles 2 had the opportunity to be something great if the right steps were made, whether it had become a sequel or a TV show. Honestly, wouldn't it have worked out better if it was a TV show? Imagine for each episode, while Bob is learning to be a stay-at-home dad, you have Elastigirl and Void act as a Batman and Robin duo to help Winston make supers legal again. They fight various villains, which could be filled in by the wannabe supers, and the series ends with the legalization of superheroes, and the Parr family can now fight together. Doing this would also give these wasted characters enough time to actually have personality. Tony Reinger, who has a really distracting redesign, would actually get to do more, and he and Violet's relationship can be further explored. But obviously, it wasn't meant to be. And now for eternity, we're stuck with this. Anytime I hear anybody say that they like the second Incredibles over the first, I can't help but assume that they were just tired of the same film for over a decade, and only preferred this because it's something new. In any case, what could have been a good movie became a catastrophe, all because this and Toy Story 4 switched release dates. It was all just a rushed effort, and we were completely robbed.
As long as we both shall live, no matter what happens.
Hey, come on. We're superheroes. What could happen?